Hey, Eagles fans, if you're a subscriber to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, you are already registered to win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming season. That's right, you could win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming 2021 season just for being a subscriber. If you're watching and you're not a subscriber, do it now. Subscribe to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel right now. What do you need to do? Subscribe right now.
Someday for the week, but also for the football week. We'll continue to look back at the Eagles' impressive opening game victory against the Falcons, but start to look ahead to Sunday's task, the 49ers coming to town. I'm Jody McDonald. Jeff Kerr is my sidekick today because John McMullen, they put up the picture of his face. He looks better than that. I got to give him that much credit. He looks pretty good in that picture.
I don't know. But I don't know about that, Jody. But
he looks okay there. He's gonna do the guest thing for the first half hour of the show because he's got the Eagle reporter duties and the like. JK, we had you on Monday. Any added thoughts? Anything more jump out at you? Maybe as you talk to some people or crunch numbers a little bit more from the impressive win that jumps out at you with the Eagles' victory over the Falcons?
I mean, overall, from a national perspective, everybody seems to be talking about the Eagles. I think people are eating some crow a little bit on Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, and they're starting to figure out, okay, like maybe these guys are legit. Maybe it's a week one overreaction. Who knows? But it's Eagles good, Giants bad, Cowboys indifferent, Washington's in trouble. But overall, I think a lot of people are giving the Eagles a chance against San Francisco this week.
And I say that's a good thing, Johnny Mac, because San Francisco comes in a little beat up, picking up right where they left off last year when they were probably the most injured team in the National Football League. Two significant losses coming out of week one in both their secondary and their backfield. Are we supposed to read into this, Johnny Mac, that maybe it's that kind of year for the Eagles, that when there are breaks to be accounted for, the breaks go the Eagles' way?
Well, it certainly did, as Jeff mentioned in week one. I mean, Washington loses its quarterback. The Giants are the Giants, and they just can't seem to get out of their way. And we all know Dallas. Dallas is going to have a good offense, bad defense, sort of status quo. But, yeah, I mean, injury-wise, Raheem Mostert obviously out for the season now. They lose their best corner in Justin Verrett. So those are two significant injuries, although we talk about the Kyle Shanahan rushing game, basically going back to his dad. That was the old knock. Anybody can rush for 100 yards behind the Denver offensive line. Seems that way with San Francisco, and they get Elijah Mitchell going, who's a 6th-round pick. So you'd rather have Raheem Mostert, though. You got to be realistic about it. But they're going to be able to run the football because they have the best running scheme in the NFL, in my opinion. We talked to Barrett about that yesterday, kind of echoed it, former offensive lineman. I mean, they're just, so well regarded in that phase of the game. But I do think it's going to be – Jeff's right. I mean, the national media's gone a little bit crazy, and we always talk about overreaction Mondays. It's probably the biggest overreaction is week one because nobody knows what to expect. So this is a good opportunity. I think this is more of a temperature game because San Francisco is a good team. I don't know how good, but they're good. Atlanta is a bad team. So if the Eagles play well against San Francisco, I think it means more.
John, what scares me about this 49ers team is I think Trey Sermon's probably their best running back. Eli Mitchell had a great opener, but Sermon didn't play, and Brandon Ayuk, I think Kyle Shanahan, again, he has the hamstring injury, but I think Kyle Shanahan's kind of waiting to unleash him a bit. It seems like if there's any game for those two to get going, it's going to be Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Shanahan is so well regarded in this league. You sort of want to almost press the pause button and say, okay, what's everybody loves so much? But I think you look at the way they use Deebo Samuel, for instance, and so many. We always talk about manufactured touch players, and so many teams want them, but then they don't know how to use them. and it becomes very difficult. You have to be very disciplined to use them correctly. Um, and Kyle seems to be able to do that, and he's got two of them. And you saw how good Samuel was as a rookie. He was one of those injuries Jody was talking about last season, really affected them. He's back. He played really well. Brandon Ayuk is one of those explosive guys who you always got to worry about. So now they got two of them. They got the best tight end in football. I don't know if you saw that seal block George Kittle threw against Detroit in week 1. They're a good football team, but I don't like the quarterback. So if you don't have the quarterback, you can't be a great football team. And, how quickly can they get to Trey Lance? And I think they will get to Trey Lance at some point this season, not just as a package player or a play here and there, because Kyle Shanahan doesn't want to play Jimmy Garoppolo. He feels he has to right now.
But much like the quarterback of Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts, who had a really good game, and now everyone seems to have upgraded their opinion on him, Jimmy Garoppolo had a damn good game. As a matter of fact, they put Trey Lance in early. He throws a touchdown pass on his first pass in the National Football League, and then they go back to Jimmy G, and he continues to move the ball up and down the field against the Lions. J-Mac, you got to give him at least this. He's gotten off to a good start.
Yeah, I mean, when I say I'm not a fan of the quarterback, I just think he's limited. I believe he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. I believe he's one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the world. But I think there's a ceiling there. It's very similar to Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick back in the day, where Alex, would win games, really smart guy, could manage things, get you to the finish line. But Jim Harbaugh realized, okay, there's a ceiling here, and we got to get more explosive. And he started mixing Colin Kaepernick in. Alex Smith gets hurt. They go to Kaepernick, and all of a sudden they're in the Super Bowl. I think you're going to see a similar situation in this. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I think it's going to happen.
John, the 49ers are so banged up at cornerback, as you know. Jason Verrett, they just signed Dre Kirkpatrick. I don't know if that move's going to play by Sunday. Probably not. But Josh Norman's on that roster. It's a mess right now. And do you see Jalen Hurts' yards per attempt going up this week?
No, I don't. I mean, that's not until that was one of the most impressive things about Nick Sirianni's game plan. I mean, he understands what Jalen Hurts can do well at this point. Now, I think maybe it goes up a little bit because it almost has to. But you're going to see a lot of you're going to see the bubble screens, especially early, because you want to give him confidence. And then when you do go downfield, you sort of have a quarterback that is feeling it. But I mean, that's not the strength of Jalen Hurts' game. And I think that's the early positive sign of Nick Sirianni. He knows what his quarterback can do. And it seems like he's not going to ask him to do what he can't do that well. And that's just sit in the pocket and throw the football down the field, especially in the intermediate zones. Now, if you get behind by 2 scores and you're in the fourth quarter, you have to. And then we'll kind of learn a little bit more about Jalen Hurts. But the Eagles want to do what they did against Atlanta, and they want to start the way they started and obviously get a lead and play from the lead, and that makes things much easier.
JM, I know you were part of it yesterday. Shane Steichen was the coach that the Eagles made available, and he answered a couple of questions. I'm not sure if you had one of those. That's a real good question, which I think he stated to about half of the questions he got yesterday.
That's the old football trick. Yeah, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
When you get that's a good question, that means, oh, thanks for going easy on me. That's basically
he rolled it out there at least half of the questions that he got yesterday. But one that he did get was sort of about what you were talking about, that Jalen Hurts had the lowest yards in the air passing number in the NFL this past week. And they asked him, again, setup question, did you have calls for plays that were supposed to go further down the field? And Steichen said, oh, yeah, that just they weren't there, that the defense specifically tried to take them away. And that's why the quarterback specifically, quote unquote, checked down to a shorter route. Do you think that was overstated? Do you think that the Eagles specifically wanted to keep things short and simple for Jalen Hurts just to get him off on a good note week one?
Yeah, well, definitely they wanted to start that way. And obviously you go bubble screen and bubble screen two, what was it, two of the first three plays. I mean, that was the game plan. Get a feel, and that's how you turn 52% to 77%, by the way. It doesn't happen. It happens by design. So, and again, you get the quarterback feeling a little bit good, feeling a little bit confident. Then when he goes down the field, like the Devontae Smith touchdown, it's a nice throw. And who knows, again, you make him feel a little bit good about himself, and maybe that helps. But yeah, they called some deep shots, and Jalen took the underneath routes. And, I said all the things about Jalen Hurts, and I said this yesterday to you, Jody. The most impressive part to me was the decision making. Now, you have to watch the all 22 and figure out, okay, was this shot there? Was this shot not there? You don't want to become Alex Smith when you're that talented and just check down, check down, check down, check down. But we're through one game, so we have to see, is that going to continue? Is it going to slowly ramp up? And I think it's going to slowly ramp up. But, yeah, you can't just check it down all the time. People figure that out pretty quickly, and they'll start getting really tight on the receivers and making things more difficult if they're not concerned about guys going over the top. The good news is the Eagles have receivers that can run by people. So you can play that little game and go bubble screen, bubble screen, bubble screen, then fake bubble screen and go behind the defense, which I think is what Nick is trying to do.
John, we now got 5 starts of Jalen Hurts. In my opinion, we got 4. What's your evaluation of what you're seeing just based on last year and Sunday's game?
Well, Sunday's game was tremendous. I mean, I like I said, I tried to come up with negatives, and it's hard. And most of the stuff, like the 4th downs, I thought was more on the coaching staff and the fact that they were late getting the plays in, and everything seemed a little bit rushed. And I think that might have threw things off. So you can nitpick on there. As for Jalen's play as a whole, I didn't see much you can nitpick about. I always say he flushes right a little bit too much instead of trying to climb the pocket. I still think that's something he's got to work on, but he knows that. He's said that. But yeah, I mean, it was good. Do I think he's, one of the top 5 quarterbacks in football? No. I mean, it's going to get more difficult. The question is, how bad is Atlanta? We all think they're bad. Are they bottom of the league bad? Are they number 1 pick bad? They might be. That was pretty bad. And if they are, I think that changes things. And that's why I think this game's so important, because this defense is good. That front, Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, you can bring in Dee Ford as a pass rusher. Fred Warner's one of the best linebackers. Yeah, they're having problems at corner. But that front 7 is going to make things a lot more difficult than the Falcons were able to make things. So I am interested to see how Jalen handles that, especially if Nick Bosa gets going, because that guy can wreck a game.
J-Mac, I want to touch on this. We brought it up on the show yesterday. You did. You saw it on Twitter, like with 20 minutes ago, as usual. Something breaks at the tail end of Birds 365. But Howie Roseman did a deal yesterday with Fletcher Cox, putting a bunch of his salary this year into a signing bonus, which freed up about $11 million in cap space for the Eagles this season. They now have the 3rd most cap space in the National Football League of any team for this year only. Why? If I could figure out, there's a guy sitting out there free, they want to be able to scoop him up, that would make sense. It's not like the cap space just goes away. You're just pushing off potential cap space issues to future years on the length of Fletcher Cox's deal. Nothing came to me immediately as to why the Eagles would aggressively do this for this specific season. What do you make of it?
Well, part of it was done Saturday, so part of it was for the Mailata deal. It was actually filed on Saturday, so they worked out that extension, and they're obviously trying to work out an extension with Dallas Goedert, perhaps Josh Sweat, even Avonte Maddox, and then you have some room. Remember what the Eagles did with Alshon Jeffrey back in the day? You know, they got him to sign on a 1-year prove-it deal. Played well, and then they were able to extend him. So you have a bunch of guys on prove-it deals. So say Anthony Harris, he'd be the one most likely. If he starts to play well, you don't want to get him. You don't want him to get to free agency again, and so he could be a candidate in that type of instance. But that would be later in the season. But yeah, it's more about potential extensions than any outside player. This is not the time of the year where you generally bring in outside players. Although, you know, Jeff was talking about San Francisco. They evidently tried to trade for Cam Dantzler because they have so many cornerback problems. So there's always a chance for a lower level trade, but certainly not anything splashy. So it's more about potential extensions and trying to get those done.
John, I was doing some game prep for this game, and I thought this was interesting, and I'm not sure where to make of – we know the 49ers offensive line, defensive lines are good. There's no doubt about that. But they allowed the fewest pressures out of any of the teams last week, even fewer than the Eagles on the offensive line, and they generated the most pressures against, in my opinion, a pretty good Detroit offensive line. Now, I know Taylor Decker missed that game, but regardless, it seems like – if the Eagles are actually going to upset this team, they're going to have to generate more than 6 pressures, and they're going to have to stop the 49ers from getting 23 off Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I mean, it's strength versus strength. It really is. I mean, we talk about, you know, Jordan Mailata and the extension and the big block, everyone, you know, the highlight block. This is it, man. You're going to know if George's going to the Hall of Fame this week, because if he shuts down Nick Bosa, he's a player. On the other side, talk about first ballot Hall of Famers, Trent Williams. I mean, talk to an NFL offensive lineman or defensive lineman about Trent Williams. I mean, that guy is unbelievable. So you start talking about the Eagles rush and saying, well, you're probably not going to get anything from the edge on the right side. You know, is this the week where we see the multiplicity of Jonathan Gannon's defense? Because, you know, the Eagles didn't blitz against Atlanta because they didn't have to. They might have to blitz against San Francisco if they want to generate some pressure. Are they going to do it? Who's going to do it? Where's it coming from? You know, this is all interesting stuff because, you know, there are no Anthony Barrs on the Eagles defense. So there's no natural, you know, people can talk about Jannard Avery, but I don't know. I don't know. I look at those. That's the one asterisk I put on week 1 was stopping the run and the linebackers. Because I think that might be a problem against good teams. And we talked about the San Francisco running game. I mean, they're going to try to run it. They do a good job. And can these linebackers hold up? I don't know.
J-Mac, I know that he wasn't made available to the across-the-board media, but they did put up an interview on Eagles' website with Nick Sirianni yesterday as well. And he was asked specifically about the 49ers, and I'll give Sirianni this much. He's been pretty forthcoming with you guys basically since he took over as the coach. He was very, very, very keep the cards close to the vest about the 49ers. He really thinks this whole nobody knows who we are yet thing is going to work for him. even after he kind of snuck up on the rest of the league last week? Is that why he's not ready to give any real insight other than, ooh, they're a real good football team about the 49ers?
Yeah, he really does believe that. Now, they have 60 minutes on film. This is a good coaching staff, even though they lost, obviously, Robert Saleh. Old Eagle, D'Amico Ryans as the defensive coordinator now. So, I mean, the most, and I wrote about this on Sports Illustrated, the most impressive thing to me about Nick Sirianni didn't happen Sunday. It happened Monday. And it happened baked into an answer about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's blocking. And he said, we're going to have to get him touches off of that as well. And you say to yourself, why are you trying to get J.J. Arcega-Whiteside touches off that? He's not a playmaker, hasn't made a play in 3 years, blah, blah, blah. Well, if 19 comes on the field and you can say, Fred Warner can say bubble screen, bubble screen, bubble screen, I mean, you're done. Right. You're cooked. So you got to adjust. And that's what Chip Kelly couldn't do. Chip Kelly set the world on fire in the first half against Washington. And everybody's like, oh, this guy's 10 years ahead of the league. By the second half, he had already caught up. They almost came back and won the game. There was no adjustments to the adjustments. I don't know if Nick Sirianni is going to accomplish that, but people are going to catch up pretty quickly if you keep running bubble screens and things. If you keep running the same stuff over and over and over, and he can at least verbalize, I think that's a positive. He's verbalizing, look, I can't do this constantly. And I think that's a positive because that's the first time, if you verbalize it, then you can execute it. If you realize you have to do it, and he realizes he has to do it. So everything is sort of a constant evolution. But yeah, I mean, San Francisco's already got 60 minutes. They know if JJ's on the field and Quez Watkins is on the field, they might go bubble screen. So, fake the bubble screen, go a different direction, then you have something else on film. I think, Nick understands that. He realizes that. He understands he's going to have to do that moving forward.
John, around the league, Isaac Seumalo is regarded as, at least by a lot of people, a top 10 left guard. And for some reason, Philadelphia fans don't seem to think Isaac Seumalo isn't any good. Landon Dickerson is eventually going to replace him. But he is pretty good, right? I mean, this isn't like – I just don't know why the fans think, week 2 against Kansas City from 4 years ago.
Context, Jeff. They don't pay attention to anybody else. They don't know how bad the offensive lines are around this league. You got teams, Jody's team, the Jets would be a perfect example. The team I covered for a long time, the Vikings, would be a perfect example. They go years, they can't find a stinking offensive lineman. Jeff Stoutland keeps just churning them out. Yeah, Isaac Seumalo is a really good player. I've been saying this from day one. Landon Dickerson isn't here to replace Isaac Seumalo. Landon Dickerson is here to replace either Jason Kelce if he retires or Brandon Brooks if the Eagles move in a different direction because of contract negotiations in 2022. And he will replace one of those two. I don't know which one. He's not replacing Isaac. Isaac's playing. Whether it's center, left guard, whatever they decide is the best way to go if whenever Jason Kelce decides to call it quits. Yeah, Isaac's a good player. But the answer to your question is context. They don't realize how bad it is around the league because they're focused on the Eagles, and the Eagles have a top 5 offensive line. And when something happens last year, you would think it would jolt people into reality. But for whatever reason, they get certain players in their head. And the problem with Isaac is, and now he's probably not, because Jordan is still a work in progress, but everybody loves Jordan Mailata, so we'll put him off to the side. But when you have Kelce and Brooks and Johnson, and those are all pro level players, and you just have a good player, they think that he's not good because he's not as good as them. That would be my best explanation.
That's exactly where I was going, John. Out of the 5 offensive linemen, he's number 5. He got my lotto. They just gave this mega contract to, and he's the biggest fan favorite because he's the underdog 7th rounder who never played football, came off the rugby field to become a left tackle, and 3 Pro Bowlers. So who's left? Isaac. Doesn't mean he's not getting the job done. Doesn't mean he's not good, but you're going to comp him to the 4 other guys who are starting on the offensive line for him, and he's the least noteworthy of the bunch. So, oh, shoot, we drafted a guy in the 2nd round. We got to get him in immediately. Who's he going to replace? Well, number 5. That's Isaac Seumalo, even though you are 100% right. The guy doesn't deserve that because he's Jeff said it, a top 10 right guard, left guard in football. I'd absolutely put him in the top 10.
Yeah, I'd put him in the bottom of the top 10, but he's right in that range. He's probably right there, 9, 10, somewhere in that range. And again, that's probably the better context. If you look at the 32 teams and you got a top 10 player at a position, that's pretty good. Yeah. And you don't look to it really. You're not going to have a top 10 player at every position. So you're always looking to improve the other issues you have. Linebacker would be a notable example. You're not worried about a top 10 player, and the Eagles are not worried about Isaac Seumalo. Jeff Stoutman loves the guy, loves him. And he would say he's the 4th best offensive lineman, by the way.
Well, then who would be the 5th, Malav?
Jordan. Jordan's not consistent enough for Jeff. Trust me on that one.
He's a nitpicker. One thing I wanted to ask, since we brought up Jason Kelce, I mean, he always seems like he's year to year, but like, how did the Eagles view it? Like, I assume they drafted Dickerson to prepare for an inevitable Jason Kelce retirement, but I mean, the way he's been playing, why hang it up at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's just a matter of, how much his body can take. I mean, it used to be Jason Peters. Now it's Jason Kelce. You watch these guys get ready for practice, and they're taping up his elbow like a mummy. And, this is for practice. And this is for a 45-minute Friday practice, to get through it. That guy plays through everything. Mick Tingelhoff died this week. And I don't know if you guys know Mick, but
Hall of Famer.
He's a Hall of Fame center. One of the great lines, his backup, guy by the name of Godfrey Zornbrecher, a weird name, but he had a great line. He said, "I'm the 3rd string center," and people are looking at him like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Yeah, behind Tingelhoff and Tingelhoff Hurt. That's the first 2. He played 240 straight games, never missed a game his entire career, and he was undersized. Different era, of course, but he was sort of like the Jason Kelce of his era. Plays through everything. And that's Jason Kelce. I go back to last year when he hurt his elbow. It was the play before the second half. You're like, okay, he's done for the season as well. Offensive line, how the season was going. He's done. He misses one play, goes in the locker room. He's cursing on the field. He's back out there with one arm, hanging. Can't move it, but he's playing.
I want to ask this question of both of you guys. Since you're NFL reporters, you would probably know this and or be able to theorize on it, with the fact that the 49ers found out that not only is Mostert going to be gone for 8 weeks because they put him on IR, they decided to go ahead and have the surgery, which is definitely going to keep him out for the entire season because the rehab's upwards of 6 months. To respond to that, they signed Kerryon Johnson yesterday, who the Eagles, of course, had in camp this year and released rather early, as a matter of fact. Always injury issues with Kerryon Johnson. That's why I see him as a kind of questionable signing. If you're bringing him in to replace an injured player, you bring him in and there's a good chance he's going to get injured too. How does that really help you? There is the age-old question of how much can the new team pick the brain of the new player when he has just left the team that they're facing this upcoming week. That is oftentimes stated when these type of moves happen. Is it overstated, John and Jeff? Is it something that really can be beneficial to a new team when they sign a guy? Do they really come in with the secret sauce to be able to spill to their new team? Here's the way they do it. Here's the way they call things. Here's what their ideas look like. Is that something that's overstated?
Well, the first thing I thought of was Malcolm Perry when he signed with the Patriots, or they claimed him off waivers. I forget what the actual transaction was. And then they put him on IR. So I'm like, okay, this is definitely a let's prepare for Brian Flores and the Dolphins move. And the Patriots got a lot of yards, and they probably would have beat Miami. And it was a lot of – I did notice a lot of – and again, Flores is a Belichick disciple, but I did see a lot of Miami stuff in New England's offenses. And New England's defense definitely seemed to know where Tua was going to be at certain points, so I think it does help. I don't think Kerryon Johnson is – unless, Eli Mitchell – Trey Sermon, Jeff Wilson, Jermichael Hasty get hurt, which with the 49ers, it's very possible. I definitely think it's, okay, what does this guy do, or what did this guy show you? They definitely ask that question.
Well, coaches believe it. I know, I actually joked about that on Twitter, and I said, the 49ers signed Kerryon Johnson to find out all Nick Sirianni's secrets. And our buddy Ryan Paganetti actually tweeted at me, yeah, that helps a lot. So as a former coach, they think it's serious. I think it's more about the quarterback if you do it. Cincinnati signed Jake Browning. I think that might help. I don't know about a running back. But the interesting thing, I got a trivia question for you guys. There are 5 former Eagles on the 49ers practice squad. 5 former
really
Eagles. Yeah,
River Craycraft
they're all over the place.
Is he?
What's that?
River Craycraft, is he still on that team?
Yes, River's one of them. That's the hardest one. I'm impressed. I'm impressed that you got there. Eagles fan favorite Nate Gary is on there. The unstoppable
Nate Sudfeld. They got Nate, the unstoppable Nate Sudfeld.
Josh Rosen.
He's in there. Kerryon Johnson, obviously. And Jordan Matthews, making the shift to tight end. 5 different former Eagles on the 49ers practice squad. But I'm impressed that Jeff got River Craycraft, because I thought that was the one nobody would get.
It's easy to remember, John. That's all it is.
Yeah.
All right,
so
JM.
But as far as picking the brain, Kerryon Johnson's. Yeah, again, if it's a quarterback, I'll listen to it, but I don't think it has much relevance.
No, the Jets and Patriots did that every year for years when the Jets had the Patriot guys coming down to help out and become Jet head coach, like my favorite Sopranos part-time actor, who was a bust, Mangini. They've been playing that back and forth game for years, and I was just interested that it happened yesterday with the Eagles and the 49ers. All right, J-Mac, are you impressed with Nick Sirianni's playoff beard? It's getting a little big. I don't think he's shaved in a while now. Are we going to see Nick Sirianni looking like Santa Claus soon enough if the Eagles keep winning games?
Yeah, I think Shane Steichen might have started that last week. He just said you're too busy to shave this time of year. So I think it's more of too busy. Football coaches, they always got to work. They always got to, but people have said, you got to find something negative. You got to find something negative. So I found something negative. I'm getting really tired of everything with this coaching staff. Everything is a T-shirt slogan. Everything. Just stop it. Stop it. Talk to me like a human being. Yesterday was feed the positive, weed the negative. That came from Shane Steichen. We always know. Now we got dog mentality with Nick Sirianni. Just talk to me like a human being. Leave that for the players.
So you didn't like Sirianni repping the Philly stuff last week?
Oh, he always does. He panders. I ripped him for that too. He came out with that Phillies gear. Jody will tell you. I said, first of all, okay, fine. You want to rep, you want to pander to the fans, but take off the green T-shirt underneath. You could tell somebody gave him that right in the press. What happens is they're in the office, they're in the PR office, and they come out the PR door and they got a tent because everything's got to be outside now because of COVID. And you could tell, whether it was Bob Lang or Brett Strosacker. They handed him a Phillies C shirt and a hat, and he put it on, and he still had his Eagle stuff on underneath. And yeah, I mean, but people buy it. I understand why they do it, but people buy it. But yeah, I rip him for that.
We'll see if the coach comes out in a media session with flyer stuff. If he's got a Gritty T-shirt on before the week is out, then I will absolutely jump on the Stop the Pandering bandwagon with you, J-Mac.
Well, we got to wait for playoff time. He'll have Sixers gear on come playoff time.
I wanted to see him wearing like a Trust the Process or a Rights to Ricky Sanchez T-shirt.
I won't be really. Well, that's too focused, Jeff. You're just playing the one small significant portion of the fan base. Hanging on for dear life, by the way. You don't have to worry about pandering to them anymore. I don't think.
That's probably true. All right, J-Mac, one thing that I mentioned last time on my show on WIP, and here's my concern about it. It's not a big concern, but I got to admit that it's niggling a little bit in the back of my mind. They kicked the Falcons, took us up and down the field last week. They've gotten some props for it. Not a ton. I did want to run this by specifically for Jeff Kerr's numbers. The power rankings across the league from the major media outlets. CBS still has them at 23. Now they're up a couple slots, but that's still well into the 20s. USA Today 22, Sports Illustrated 18th, NFL Network 17th, ESPN 21. So the highest they got is 17. They're not in the top half of the league yet, even though they won as impressively as they did. Any chance for even a small part of maybe smelling themselves a little bit this week? That this side of the New Orleans Saints beat down of the Packers, they probably had the most impressive and lopsided victory. Is there any chance for overconfidence in that locker room?
Yeah, I mean, we asked Nick that right after the game. I mean, it's human nature almost, and they have so many young players they're counting on, especially playmakers. It's easy to and that's one of the most impressive things about Jalen Hurts, because when I was talking to Jalen, it was, I always say he always talks about rat poison, and he got that from Nick Saban, and people assume that's negative. He said, well, at Alabama, it's positive. Everybody's patting you on the back. You're beating everybody. Everybody's telling you how great you are. And that could have just as much an effect, negative effect on you as losing. And we asked Barrett about that yesterday, Jody, as a former player, and he said, yeah, it's probably easier to dial in after you get beaten badly than when you beat somebody badly. I think it's just human nature. Yeah, that's a big test for Nick Sirianni this week. He's got to keep these guys focused. I don't think you have to worry about the veterans. They understand, but especially some of the younger guys, you got to find a way. That's part of the job. I mean, that's, find a way to keep these guys locked in, and that's going to be something to keep an eye on.
Well, I got it too. Devonta Smith. First off, I thought his press conference was brilliant. It doesn't look like he'll get caught up in the hype of anything, just based on
an Alabama guy. He's
I don't know where they put the ball. It'll find me, or oh, people text me, I don't text them, that type of thing. I was loving that. So yeah, he definitely looked like he won't get caught up in it. I'm worried about him. The other wide receiver there, Jalen Reagor. He's back on Twitter now. So.
Well, yeah, there's a perfect example. That's not an Alabama guy. So he's probably hyped up and saying, oh, look, and he's turned the corner. He had such a difficult rookie season, has such a good debut, 6 of 6 targets, the touchdown, which he should thank Jordan Mailata for. But he did read the block really well. Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example. That's the player that type of players who you really got to look at. Kenny Gainwell as well, very young player, getting a lot of pats on the back. Yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And it's definitely something Nick is aware of. Again, he's aware of stuff like this, and I think that's a very positive sign.
Right. If you're going to deal with it correctly, you got to be able to acknowledge and spot it before it ever hits. And give Sirianni credit for being that kind of guy on top of stuff here in his early reign days as the Eagles coach. J Mac, no, you got a busy day. Thanks for hopping on with us, buddy.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
John McMullen. Be back here at the top of the show again tomorrow as my co-host. But I got Jeff Kerr as my co-host today. Make the most of it. Come back, talk some more birds. Got a good guest coming up in hour number 2. We'll tell you about that when we continue here on Birds 360.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.